Test test. Test test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Is our tech guy controlling the volume? Can you go through that? I think for people that are in here, I hear fine, but I may have trouble hearing people on the. And I apologize for that. It's my bad, and of course, you all are gonna have to bear the brunt. Because I really do want to hear it, except for Bob. I really do want to hear what you have to say, except for Bob. See, it's old and grizzled as me.
Test.
71. Yeah, you're old and grizzled, just like me. You're just smarter. That's it.
I'll make sure your microphones are on.
Well, I'm not turning my on until we start, because I don't, there's stuff I might not want to record it. Good, good. We're unmuted now.
Now we're unmuted. Hello, Helene.
1, 2.
Hello.
Oh, Helene. Hope you're surviving.
Hi.
Humidity.
Hope you're surviving the heat and humidity, Helene.
It's not my favorite kind of weather, but I survive.
Good, good, good. All right, so Julie, we have 1 minute. Hey, Malik. All right. I love that digital clock. I can just sit there and stare at it. Tom, thank you for your email, by the way. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We had another meeting on that today. Narrowing in on.
My response was very brief compared to what you sent, and I have not yet clicked on the link to go and investigate what that has to say. I'm sure that's going to blow my brain and I won't be able.
It's just a demonstration of what that particular function does.
How are you?
So,
Logistic
function.
and
But that was good to,
logged into Zoom. and
otherwise,
share my
good.
Way to
PowerPoint
mathematically
hear.
constrain it, because otherwise it
So
goes
I'll be
logarithmic on you. So
You
this,
guys can talk.
this, it basically takes a logarithmic set and turns it into something more linear,
Oh, you want me to do Joanne?
which is good.
Where's Joanne's? Okay, where's Joanne's? That's in SharePoint?
Okay, folks, it is 3:30. So we're going to spool this thing up, start with a call to order. And secondly, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get up, she's gonna bring you. Oh, she's.
Okay. And for those of you that arrived late, unfortunately, I left my hearing aids at home, so please speak up. I'm sorry to put you through that. Roll call. Flint Nelson here. Steve McKesson. Helene Brazier.
Here.
Bob Marnett.
Here.
Mig Gaska.
Not here.
Julie Johnson. Word is that Julie will be a little late, but is planning on attending. Alternate Tracy Largent.
I am here.
Okay, outstanding. So we do have a quorum. We do not need to seat an alternate and all right. Number 4, instructions to allow public comment on agenda items from those who are attending this meeting via teleconference or video conference. If at any point anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment and have joined this meeting with their computer, they can click on the raise hand button located at the bottom of the screen. We will be alerted they would like to speak. When called upon, please unmute the microphone and ask the question or make comments in no more than 3 minutes. Those who have joined by dialing a number on their telephone will need to press *6 to unmute themselves and then *9 to alert us they would like to speak. A slight pause will also be offered at the conclusion of each agenda item discussion to allow public members an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. Yahoo. All right, seating of alternates, not necessary. Item 6, additions, deletions, amendments to the agenda. We'll start with the staff. You have anything?
Yes, Chairperson, we do.
Okay.
Staff requests that item 18 the RMWD Grant Research and Coordination PowerPoint be postponed until the September Engineering and Operations Committee meeting. We have a very full agenda tonight. Want to get through it as quickly as we can. And this is an important agenda item and a presentation. Some of the staff has already seen the preview. It's good, it's informative, but we want to allow it its full time. So if that's okay with the committee, we'd like to delete 18 from today's agenda.
Hey, I'm here. If you
Oh.
didn't catch it.
Hey, Meg.
Good afternoon.
Well, as I look at the agenda, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 items where this committee is being asked to make a recommendation to the board, and they are potentially lengthy.
Correct.
And I think the grant presentation is very important.
Correct.
And so I think that rather than try to be rushing through and, there are some concerns among some committee members about this meeting going late and keeping the staff a long time, et cetera, that perhaps that's the best thing to do. Bob, are you okay with that?
I'm fine with
Steve, you okay with that?
Good, yes.
Helene, are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. And Meg, how about you?
I'm good.
Okay. All right.
That sounded like a roll call vote to me. Yep.
Did we need to do a roll call on that?
If it was a regular board meeting, yes. For a committee meeting where we're not strictly bound by the Brown Act,
But in essence,
you
we
got
just did.
consensus, yeah.
But we just did. Okay. All right. Anything else, Chad?
No, the only other thing is that staff has prioritized the agenda on what we feel were the priority items. But if the committee wants to take anything out of order, of course, you're well within your ability to do so. And we're happy to accommodate. We're just trying to, going
Well-
forward, we're going to try and prioritize these as we would.
Well, I mean, the items that are needed for the board meeting are the ones that need to come first. I think
Correct.
that- Okay. No, we're good, right?
Okay.
All right, let's go.
That's all from.
Item 7, public comment relating to items not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public here who need to comment on something?
I don't
None?
think we've received any
Any
written
written?
comments.
No written
No
comments
written?
received.
Okay, we'll move along. Item number 8, approval of minutes. All of you have received the minutes that Dawn and her crew so thoughtfully prepared from the last meeting. And they are a little long because we did a lot at the last meeting. So are there any suggested changes or comments about the minutes? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I move we approve the minutes of July.
It's been moved by Helene Brazier. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Bob seconds it. Bob Marnett. Dawn?
Member Brazier,
Aye.
Gaska,
Aye.
Member Marnett,
Aye.
Member Johnson, is she's absent?
Not here yet.
Okay. Member McKesson
Aye.
and Member Nelson.
Aye. All right, item number 9, general manager comments. Tom, that's you.
Yeah, last month I described some of the things that are going along the Colorado as far as the what we see with Lake Mead and Lake Powell. Yesterday, 3 of our board members and myself and Tracy went to an aqua event where the person at Met who handles the Colorado River program, who's been deeply involved with everything in the Colorado River for decades, laid out what's happening there. And a lot of what he said was similar to what I've been telling you, in that, the Colorado has a deficit of supply, the supply and demand are out of balance structurally, and that unless something's done, it's just going to continue to go down. If nothing's done, he said, it'll hit dead pool within 3 years, which means no water for anybody. So something has to happen. He also said that, hey, Lake Oroville will spill again. And whether it's this year, next year, who knows, but it will. So the California side is going to go up and down. He said it's unusual over history that both systems would have shortages 2 years running at the same time. That's the thing we find ourselves in. But he talked at some length about the Bureau of Reclamation, which in about 2.5 weeks has given a deadline for the 7 basin states and to come up with some way to cut 2 to 4 million acre feet of demands off the 2023 deliveries. Something that they have spent decades talking about, but have never come to conclusion. And he said there's some hope. He didn't seem, I don't know, overly optimistic it would happen. But he did say the Bureau of Reclamation had a couple different options on what they might do. One is to go with the priority right system, which means basically cut off Arizona, which means probably a lot of people are going to have to move out of Phoenix. There's going to be problems. Nevada and Arizona get cut first, California later on. He didn't think that was going to be super likely, because if you cut all the supply to Arizona, it's going to, they were the last connectors to the river, and they have the lowest rights. And the book, The Water Knife, starts to come to fore. So that's unlikely to happen. He talked about another way would be to look at right now the losses on the river, which amount to about 2 million acre feet, 1.5 to 2 million acre feet, were absorbed by the Bureau of Reclamation. So if you were storing water in Lake Mead, they eat all the evaporation. And so one thing they were talking about is say, hey, guess what? We're no longer can eat the evaporation because there's not enough supply. So we're going to cut evenly everybody by 2 million acre feet. All your supply is good. That's one thing. He looked at another one where they might look at the beneficial use of the water and take a look and prioritize for people, which I think was a shot across the bow at the fact that 80% of the water is used for ag out there, and some of it. And he even mentioned alfalfa in his comments. And so it's we don't know what they're going to do. The general consensus is that if they do anything but follow the standard rights and cut Arizona, the people in the Imperial Valley and Yuma are going to sue the federal government and try to tie it up in court. Whether the Bureau of Reclamation has enough horsepower to enforce this while the lawsuits are going on is unclear. I expect that they will be able to show that, because before we lose access to water, we lose access to power, and they're going to protect that hydropower at all costs. There's also a challenge that they had made assumptions during all their planning scenarios that Lake Powell would be able to release more water, because there's water comes from Flaming Gorge Reservoir all the way up and near Yellowstone, comes down around into Lake Powell, and then that they thought they could draw that down closer to where the hydropower was, but it turns out that the intakes for the Navajo Nation and Page, Arizona are higher than that. And if they take it down too far, they run out of water. And nobody had anticipated building deeper intakes. And at this late date, it's hard to get a project like that up and built that fast, but something will have to be done for that in the future. But we'll see. It'll be a couple weeks. What will hit the fan in a big way. Either they will come up with some sort of way that to pay farmers to fallow land. Right now in the spot market for water transfers, it's almost $1,500 an acre foot, which is way high.
How much?
$1,500 an acre foot. That's like our wholesale cost, which normally it's a couple $100. And so I think some people are anticipating that there's going to be people paid for their water to fallow, which would be almost criminal in my opinion, because especially the way some of that water is used to export out of the country is just, it's not a beneficial use. I hope that I put on Twitter, I hope they follow the beneficial use and say, hey, we want the food for America. We want the cattle feed for American cows, but we really don't have the water to feed cows in Saudi Arabia, China, and elsewhere. So we'll see. The word was that he said everybody who uses Colorado needs to prepare to take less, and we do as well. And that's one of the reasons Met is working hard on reuse, other things like that, that we just, it's not ever going to go back to normal. He thinks this will be some of the last years they'll ever run that aqueduct full, because even their stored water they have in there, once it gets to a certain level, they can't take it. And they're pulling it right now. They're running the aqueduct full. They're pulling everything they can, which is pushing the lake down. But it's, we're going to have to get used to a new normal. And so somewhere the cuts are going to happen. It's extremely unlikely that urban folks are going to run out of water. It's very likely that certain farming operations are going to cease, and that's just the way it is. So that's the report.
Wow.
Thank you, Tom. Every morning, 5 days a week, I've spent an hour or more watching the financial news on CNBC because I'm a market guy. And about a week ago, they had a fairly substantial segment about that. And they had photographs of the reservoir kind of before and now.
Mhm.
I had no idea. It was spooky to see how low the reservoir is. And they showed the intake valve, the inlets for the hydroelectric production. and the water level is just pretty much right at the inlets. I mean, it's kind of like water in, water out is just keeping it
Balance.
fairly level. It was spooky, and I was curious. I remembered your discussion
Yeah.
about ag land and what to do with all that. So thank you for the update. It looked,
Well, I'll tell
the
you-
the visual was just very, very eye catching.
Well, we have to take a hard look at it. And heretofore, it's been off limits to talk about the ag use of water, but they use 80% of the water in the state. And we can all rip it all on.
right?
well, I drove my daughter, moved her 2 weeks ago from San Luis Obispo to Oakland, and I drove the 101 and went through Salinas Valley. Salinas Valley, you see every kind of vegetable under the sun growing out there, between grapes or tree stock, but all this other stuff, that varieties of stuff. Drove back down the 5 and it's all almonds or tree stock.
And the
The whole
signs,
way.
and the signs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And all kinds of signs. But it used to be you'd drive up there and you'd wonder, oh, that's cotton. And you'd try to figure they put signs out what vegetable was growing where. Now you don't have to guess. It's just basically tree stock. It was rare to see anything but tree stock. And the vast majority of that's getting exported out of the country. And it's like, this seems like a pretty simple thing to solve, but there's some entrenched interests who are making a lot of money.
Yep.
Who are padding the pockets of politicians, I presume, to keep that from happening. So.
Any comments or questions for Tom? If not, we'll move on. Item 10, engineering and CIP program manager.
Well, yeah, before we leave that, I guess my comment would be,
Sorry, Meg.
if there's gonna be cutbacks, then what's our plan?
Well, for
was that?
us in the urban level, there's not going to be any significant cutbacks. It's really Met's going to have to rely on different storage. Now, if the state water project, if we have another dry year in a row, which would be really unusual, there's going to be some pain felt by everybody. But it's likely going to be coming mainly from the big ag in the Colorado River Basin. That's the easiest place to get it because we've already cut to the bone. I mean, all of our cut. I mean, who has a lawn here, right? And it's like there's not much more. We're not going to urban conserve our way out of here. And the deliveries will come to us. Whether the more likely scenario is the governor, like last time, will impose restrictions before we get them from Met.
Any other comments? Sorry to have cut you off. I moved too quickly there, Meg. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, Chad, I think item 10 is you, engineering and CIP program manager comments.
I don't have any comments.
Outstanding. All right. And item 11, the operations manager comments. Lo and behold, he physically is here. The prodigal son has returned. Robert, what do you got?
Panic man.
Wow. I'm going to defer my comments for items 20 and 14 because we're on a time crunch today.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, item 12, committee member comments. Let me just catch Julie up. Maybe Meg, I'm not sure. We decided to postpone item 18, the grant research. We have a very full calendar and that item deserves good time and discussion, and
Absolutely.
otherwise it would just get very
Yeah.
truncated. So we're going to push it to September
Okay.
because we have 4 items that are board bound, headed to the
Okay.
board. Okay, so I
That's
just
fine.
wanted you to, and Meg, I think you were here when we decided that, right?
Right.
Okay, okay. So I just,
Thank you.
any committee member comments?
I do have one, since we have finance here. I brought up in the last meeting that we're all being billed $962 a month for backflow testing.
Mhm.
And yet the water rate sheets for February and August say that should be $461. So the question is, what?
Did they not get back to you on that? Because
No,
Cynthia, there was, and I don't know if you can relate this better than I, but you were being incorrectly billed individually because there was a mistake made by a staff member on whether there was a fire meter there or not. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. And so they had presumed that means there was 2 meters and 2 backflows. So you had 2 backflow charges. They were supposed to get a hold of you and give you a check for the extra payments to look back how far that went.
Oh.
And so you were being charged for 2 backflows. There are a handful of customers who I understand that have multiple backflows, just the way they're set up
Right.
with different multiple setups on their accounts. But, and so that was an error and they looked it into the notes that was, one of the staffers said, when somebody said, hey, there's a was a fire meter? I'm trying to remember the exact.
Yeah, there's a fire meter
Right,
charge.
but it's, but
Because I
it's
have a 1 inch connection with a 3/4.
correct. And they conflated that with meaning it was, thought it was a separate meter. So they thought there was a separate backflow, but our guys confirmed it. I apologize. I thought that you had been contacted by now.
Oh, okay, well,
Yeah, you
the
should see a
second,
credit on your account.
the second backflow valve that was there was taken out before I moved in
Right.
2011.
Yeah,
So,
so
so what you're getting to then is the real charge for backflow testing is only $4 and something
Yes.
per meter. Okay. I just had accepted that it was always nice.
and I always like, I've got 5 board members and a handful of committee members. How do we make errors on this?
How do we what?
Make the errors on those accounts.
Oh.
Then we got to look through all of them.
Luck.
You know, you're just lucky.
No, then we looked through all of them and there's only a handful and those other ones were verified. I'm like, how many more are there of these? I'm like,
So you could
Boy.
spend that on 11/4/11.
All right, Bob,
Casey, could you follow up with Cynthia on that? I know.
you're
her-
just special.
she
What
had
can I
some
say? You're just
things
special.
come up.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving along.
Okay.
Board action updates, item number 13. Chad, what did we do?
Okay. The board awarded a construction contract with Ortiz Corporation for the Rainbow Water Quality Improvement Project. We're just going to embrace that title going forward, Tom.
You keep saying you don't like the title.
I
You
know.
haven't changed it.
We're just going to embrace it.
Okay.
And that contract was for $839,850. We've issued the notice of award since then, and we have a pre-construction meeting here scheduled. That project has taken place in Division 5. The board awarded a professional services agreement with Hope Consulting for the San Luis Rey Imported Return Flow Recovery Project. That PSA is to not to exceed $600,000, and that project is district-wide. And the board approved a quitclaim of an easement near Via Puerta del Sol, where the district had an easement reserved for future potential facilities and infrastructure that we deem we will never use. So we quitclaim that back to the homeowner. And finally, there was approval of ordinance 22-15, amending and updating the admin code section 1.02.020, conflict of interest.
Thank you. And now we will proceed to the action items. Action item 14, notice of completion for the rapid aerial water supply, RAWS. And that is Bob, and this is our heli hydrant,
Yes, sir.
and you're declaring victory. Is that right?
Declaring victory, it's a formality. We do the appropriate paperwork, let the county knows, notice of completion. We start the warranty phase of the project. So we worked through all the bugs that we had with this project. Unfortunately, or I guess unfortunately, it hasn't been used yet. But fire season's upon us, so we shall see. Fires we have had locally in the last year since we installed it have been just a tad bit too far away. But it stands ready. Yeah, I can't say much more. I was going to talk about something else about it.
Have you tested it fully with the aircraft?
With the
Don't-
aircraft,
don't-
we've tested it with the aircraft, and actually now as part of our, so when we get red flag warnings or Santa Anas, we have conditions set where we increase the volume of water in our tanks as much as we can. So sometimes we'll know that days in advance. We'll get it from SDG&E, their weather service. They have their own weather people and they're great. So what we're doing with this tank is we're actually pre-filling it. So as part of that condition, that tank will already be full by the time the helicopters come inbound. For a couple of days, we just leave it full. And instead of them wasting time to activate it and do a couple loops around or whatever, just leave it full. And then once it's full, it works on a mechanical float system. So as they start drawing the water out, it just starts refilling automatically.
So even if they have radio trouble, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at that point.
Okay, and my understanding is that the recommendation from the staff is option 1. And make a determination that the action defined herein is statutorily exempt from CEQA per section long number of the CEQA statute. Except the RAWS project, approve filing the notice of completion and adding installation costs to the district's total valuation, which is basically a balance sheet thing, right, Tracy?
Yes.
So that is the recommended staff's recommendation. So do we have discussion or a motion?
No discussion.
Okay,
I move we recommend to the board the adoption of option one.
Second.
I'll second.
by Helene. So we need a second for
Second.
option one.
I'll second.
Mig seconds. Okay,
Well, it is my division. I guess I ought to do something like that.
okay, Helene, Dawn,
Member Brazier,
Aye.
Member Gasca,
Aye.
Member Marnett,
Aye.
Member Johnson. Aye. Member McKesson
aye.
and Member Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay. Item 15, preliminary environmental impact report update presentation. And you are looking for committee action on this, is that correct?
Right,
Recommend
for
the
item number
board
15.
accept- That the board accept this as a done document.
Correct. And we also have Helix Environmental here to provide the committee with a presentation, which will also be given to the board. So with that,
Fortunately, there was plenty of documentation.
yes.
Okay, go ahead, Chad.
All right, thank you. So the districts has been working with Helix Environmental going back to about 2019 in the preparation of the district's programmatic environmental impact report, which we just call the PEER. The PEER is intended to help streamline the environmental process for future district projects subject to CEQA, so we won't have to read those long titles and caveats anymore. Helix Environmental provided an update presentation to the E&O committee in April of 2021. The presentation and staff's innovative approach to the preparation of the PEER was well received. We are pleased to have Helix back with us today to present the final PEER that will be presented to the board at their August board meeting. Joanne Dramko is here with us today to present the final PEER. I think there was at least a couple committees that were not here at the previous one. So just a bit of background on Joanne. She is a principal planner and the environmental planning practice leader at Helix Environmental with more than 21 years of experience in the environmental field. Her expertise is in CEQA compliance, as well as being a technical specialist in the areas of air quality, greenhouse gases, and noise. Joanne has worked extensively with local water districts in assisting with all aspects of CEQA compliance, including preparing programmatic level planning documents, as well as project-specific analyses for a variety of water, sewer, and recycled water projects. Joanne is the current contract manager for the district's on-call contract with Helix and has been working with the district since 2014. She is the project manager for the program EIR for the Water and Sewer Facilities Plan. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Joanne. And just one more side thing, she gave all staff her cell phone number, and we reach out with Joanne on a very regular basis just to pick her brain sometimes. So without further ado, Joanne is going to share her screen for the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chad. I'm ready. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen now. And let's see, hopefully everything works. Okay, how is that?
Good.
Great. All right. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Chad, for that introduction. Again, I am Joanne Dramko with Helix Environmental Planning. I'm so happy to present the results of this long process we've been working on with the district for a couple of years now. And I will just jump right in. So, okay, so it's the Water and Sewer Facilities Plan, Program EIR, Program Environmental Impact Report. As Chad said, we just shorthand call it the PEER. Chad mentioned a couple of these milestones, but the district began this process in 2019, putting out the RFP and bringing Helix on board to prepare the program EIR. The RFP initially only included analysis of the capital improvement program projects, which is kind of a standard approach for these types of program EIRs. However, as we were working on this in fall and winter of 2020, district staff took an innovative and holistic approach to expand the coverage of the program EIR to include not only the CIP projects, but all water and sewer pipelines so that future pipeline repairs could rely on the PEER. The other innovative aspect was to examine all pipelines and categorize them into groups. Those that are in undeveloped areas, which could potentially have the greatest impacts, those that could be potentially rerouted into roadways, and those that were already in roadways. So we presented the preliminary results that estimated that a majority of projects would not require costly biological mitigation. And so by costly, we mean habitat replacement or permitting. And this is what Helix, my colleague Carl Osmundson, presented to you in the spring of 2021. So we went forward with that approach, and then we circulated the notice of preparation, or NOP, and conducted an online scoping meeting in late May to late June of 2021. And then we started to conduct extensive tribal outreach as part of AB 52 in the fall of 2021, continuing on to the spring of this year. So in early summer, we circulated the draft PEER for public review. So that just concluded, that 45-day mandated public review concluded on July 8th of this year. And we've been working on preparing the final EIR, which includes the draft EIR, the public comments, responses, and the mitigation program. So the next step for the PEER is for the board to consider certification of it, which is going to be later this month. So just as a little refresher, so the objectives of the program EIR, it has an advantage of streamlining the CEQA process. So CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. And instead of doing individual CEQA review for project after project, the program EIR allows you to look at this as holistically and to plan for projects that may have environmental constraints. And then it also provides a roadmap for future project implementation. And I'll go over all of those a little bit later. So just a little recap on the objectives of the water and sewer facilities plan. The CIP projects are to implement upgrades needed for current design, safety, and regulatory standards. We included 28 water system projects and 10 sewer system projects. And then we also included as part of the EIR maintenance activities, for which the district has issued CADEX after CADEX after CADEX. So those will be completely covered now. And then all of the other district pipeline projects, which we kind of collectively called ODPs for short, approximately 400 miles of pipelines we have covered in the program EIR. So just to give you kind of a map, I just wanted to show you a map of all the pipelines that we covered in the program EIR. So the CIP projects there are the sort of the thicker lines with the numbers associated with them. And then the thinner lines are all the water and sewer projects, pipelines that we covered in the EIR. So a lot of area covered there. So for the EIR, we analyze about 20 different topics. So we were able to screen out several issues that don't need mitigation measures. And then so the ones listed at the top there are the issues that require some mitigation at some level. So no surprises here: biological resources, cultural, geology, hazards, water quality, noise, transportation, tribal cultural resources, which goes along with cultural, and then wildfire. And the mitigation measures that we have crafted in the EIR include what I like to call different tiers. So tier 1 is sort of standard measures that would be conducted as part of project design. And then the second tier would be triggered depending on the outcome of that first level tier of mitigation. And then the third tier is those kind of standard construction best management practices, like a traffic control plan or avoidance of nesting bird season, things like that. And then while not required by CEQA or AB 52, the district will be going above and beyond to continue to coordinate with local tribes as projects are developed. So during circulation of the public EIR, we received comments from 3 agencies. So California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Caltrans, and the County of San Diego. No surprises there. These are the same agencies that commented during the scoping process. And mostly the comments that we received were standard comments regarding procedures that should be taken, permits that would be required as these projects come up. No impacts or mitigation measures needed to be changed as a result of public comments. So this is kind of the fun part. So what we will be providing for the district as part of this roadmap for tools for project implementation will include the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, or MMRP, that's required by CEQA. And then we'll be giving you a CIP sort of oriented MMRP, which means that it'll be organized by your CIP number so that you can look up a number and see which mitigation measures would apply to that project. So, and then kind of circling back on what Carl had provided to you last year, or mentioned, kind of teased to you last year, we have this really cool GIS project data mapper, and I took a couple of screenshots here. So the buckets or different colors for all of the pipelines, every single pipeline in the district's area have been categorized according to the level of biological mitigation. So the category, so that red category there are the projects that have direct, would potentially have direct biological impacts. And then the orange area are just indirect impacts. So that's just basically construction impacts. And then the green lines are the ones that are in roadways. And then we've also got a table put together that will provide, that actually provides basically a lot of that information in a tabular format. And then the other picture there behind the bio mapper is the cultural resources constraints. So we've organized your projects and pipelines according to the level of cultural impacts. So the pink area there are the greatest number of cultural constraints. The yellow is moderate, and green is the fewest number of cultural impacts. So we were able to screen out for biological, circling back on biological impacts, we were able to screen out 75% of the district's pipeline projects would not need extensive biological mitigation. So only 25% would be the ones that would potentially require mitigation, direct impacts mitigation, so either permitting or habitat replacement. But 75% of your pipelines would not require any of that. So this flow chart we put together is kind of a visual representation of the roadmap that the program EIR provides. So once the program EIR is certified, as these subsequent projects come up, you kind of, the first question that you ask is whether or not they're covered by the program EIR. So what I mean by that is whether or not they are included as described in the EIR. So the way that they look on the map, the way that they're described, and if they are fully covered, then you kind of follow the left side of the screen here, and no further CEQA action would be needed for those projects. You would potentially still need to implement mitigation measures. So you kind of follow down that and you kind of look at your projects to see if anything is required. If there's no mitigation required, you can go ahead and start construction. But so for several of them, you would still need to implement some mitigation measures, and depending on the outcome of that, then you can start construction. If something's not covered in the IR, you potentially need some additional project level analysis to determine whether you need a subsequent CEQA document. So to cut, oh yeah, I can take a question, or yeah.
Okay. This is not intended to sound facetious. Was it this project, the PEIR project, or was it some other environmental activity that identified and helped us deal with the Rice Canyon $50,000 bird?
That was that was
It was a
handled
what?
under, that was under the EIR done by the Pardee Development. Or Track
Okay,
Point.
so it was not discovered in this process.
Right, we did
Okay.
an addendum to their EIR as part of that specific project.
Okay, thank you.
But the birds are still an issue
Oh, stop it.
wherever they are.
Okay, so what we did is to kind of make this a little bit easier to digest was to pull out a couple of projects so you can see how this works. So the first project we just kind of pulled out was a near-term project, the WEAST WTP project. So we had that already mapped in the EIR. And then so for this project, you can go straight to the table and see which measures apply. So you'd have this first tier of mitigation measures, which are those project-specific measures. And then depending on the first tier, the outcome of the first tier, you may have to implement some of these second tier measures or you may not. And then some of these third tier measures are, again, just sort of standard measures in terms of avoiding nesting bird season or doing a construction traffic control plan. So then one of these ODP projects, as we call them, we picked one that is crossing a drainage. So this one is red. So this is identified as one that has higher biological constraints because it's crossing the drainage. You would have to apply, again, these project-specific first-tier measures. And then this one would likely have more measures because we know it's crossing a drainage. So this one would be potentially a little bit more involved. And again, the third-tier measures, likely you would have to implement some construction BMPs. So this is one that we picked that is one that's in the road. So it's kind of highlighted as green here. So it would be probably not have very many biological impacts. You'd still have to look at it really closely depending on what you're doing, what you end up doing when you need to do it. But you'd still have to do the first tier mitigation measures, but likely since it's in the road, you wouldn't have to do anything additional for bio, maybe a nesting survey. But if you're doing construction, if you're excavating, you might have to do a cultural record search. And so these are the maintenance projects. So these are the ones that we've been typically doing a lot of categorical exemptions for the district, doing a site-specific study and then filing the NOE and each time. So these are now fully covered under the program EIR. So there is one bio measure that's really easy to follow for vegetation trimming. So one example is vegetation trimming. So here's a picture that we found that would likely be something like this. So just stay within the easement, limit your trimming to non-native and invasive species, avoid nesting season, just kind of, again, standard practices. Another type of maintenance project is like a pavement replacement, which involves no excavation. Again, if you're near any kind of vegetated areas, you'd have to implement Bio 14. If not, you're pretty much ready to go. Another type that could potentially come up is replacement or replacement of an existing facility or some kind of upgrade where the size and capacity is the same. Again, this would normally fall under a CADX, but you'd have to just implement Bio 14 if you're near any kind of vegetated area. If it involves any kind of excavation, you'd probably have to do some cultural work, but otherwise you'd be fully covered. So just to kind of sum up, the benefits of the program EIR, this was really a staff-driven, innovative, holistic approach to analyze the district pipelines. The program EIR provides a roadmap for implementing projects. There will be no additional CEQA filing for projects that are fully covered by the peer, and that includes all of your pipelines. So again, over 75% or 280 miles of your pipeline projects would not require substantial biological mitigation measures, i.e. habitat replacement or permitting. So all in all, it will save the district money and time and allow you to build your projects faster. So just to sum up, the next step in the process would be to make a recommendation for the board to certify the program EIR and the MMRP, which is that mitigation program, approve the project, and then we file a notice of determination with the county. And that triggers a 30-day statute of limitations for any kind of legal challenges. And with that, I can open it up for questions.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you very much. Do the committee members have any questions?
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful if she could provide an explanation of what a categorical exclusion is for everyone that isn't familiar with that.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. So a categorical exemption is a part of the CEQA guidelines, which means that a project would not be subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. You have two types of exemptions. One are statutory exemptions, which are just clearly not subject to CEQA. A categorical exemption, there's a number of these category types. And it means that a project is eligible to be excluded from CEQA, but with the proviso that there are no biological, cultural hazard impacts. So you still have to do a little bit of work, but then you file the notice of exemption and you don't have to do any kind of like public review or anything like that.
And so do we have a good handle on which of our projects could potentially fall in that category?
Yeah, so once a project is covered by an EIR, you don't have to do exemptions anymore. So because we've already covered them under CEQA, so you don't have to file an exemption because it's fully covered. All you would have to do sort of, and we'll provide this to you, is kind of like a checklist for you to document that you looked at it under the program EIR, it fits, and then you kind of keep that for your records, but you don't have to file anything.
And then I guess my other question would be, all other new projects that weren't on the list that was used for this programmatic, how do those get handled?
Sure. So if it's a pipeline project, depending on what you need, it would be fully covered under the EIR. You would still just have to document that it's covered and implement any mitigation measures that would apply. If it's another kind of project that wasn't described, then we could still use the program EIR and we can do what's called an addendum. So then we would file, so it follows that the right side of that flow chart. So if it wasn't covered by the program EIR, we would do some project specific analysis, say some other pump station or something that's new that wasn't covered. We could do a project specific study. We have so many mitigation measures in the program EIR, it's likely that there wouldn't be anything new that would be needed. And then all we would need to do is document that, file what's called an addendum to the program EIR, and it wouldn't have to go through public review. You would typically do need to file just a notice of determination, but it's very streamlined.
Okay, so I thought I was done, but I have one more.
Sure.
And it's specific to a project that we don't have on the books. And the one I'm going to give as an example is there's a potential that we would possibly integrate our headquarters with the sheriff and North County Fire Protection District, okay, in a centralized location. Now, I would think that because they've been kind of leading the charge on getting the property, the sheriff might have the lead and they would do whatever is required from an environmental standpoint for the complex. Now, I guess the question I've got is there additional environmental paper that we would have to do for our portion of the complex, or will we be able to umbrella under everything they do?
Joanne, I'll jump in on this one.
Sure.
This project, the PER was really looking at when we were doing the condition assessment and looking at all the pipelines that are going to need to get replaced, was to cover all the existing facilities plus the CIP we had basically on the books at the time. The headquarters project for this facility, for that to go, we need to get this particular area a general plan amendment done. And to get a general plan amendment, we're going to have to do a separate EIR for that whole process. So that will be separate from this.
Okay.
So any pipeline that fails and needs to get replaced, we're covered of all the 400 miles of pipeline. If we come up with a new pipeline that's for a different purpose, going in a different place, that isn't covered, but the addendum process is pretty straightforward. An example came up earlier, Flint's question about the Rice Canyon pipeline. The district did an addendum to TriPoint's EIR, which we didn't have anything to do with to begin with, but as a public agency, we can do an addendum, and it was a really quick process. It's a very straightforward process, a lot easier than what we've gone through here for the last year and a half. So what we've done here is built a structure by doing a lot of work for a long period of time that will then benefit the district for decades to come by being able to modify an addendum. And then you just have to do a notice of determination. You don't have to do all the different steps we did, it's a much simpler process. And I don't know whether we could do that as an addendum to this PEIR, but it's likely we could. So we'll have to, it's a pretty big addendum, but I'm sure we could do it as well. Oops, sorry. Jeez, why is this thing?
I'll piggyback.
Okay, thanks.
I think that was a good answer, Tom, that there will need to be a specific piece of analysis done for turning the headquarters site into a housing development. But now let's pick up on the second half of what Meg's question might have intended.
Right.
As we go to a new location for us with cops and fire, whatever, is that a separate, or could we
It likely
addendum?
will be, yeah.
Okay,
Because it'll be different traffic impacts and we'll have to work with them on it. You know, that's about as cleared off a space you can ever find around here of that
Right.
size. I mean, you're not gonna find that many acres that's completely devoid of any vegetation.
and there's nothing there.
And nothing there, and it's been kept that way for a reason. And so that will be a pretty straightforward process because there's not any impacts there, so. But yeah, that will require coordination with us, whatever the final, layout is and how many trucks and cars and the traffic and the signals and all that kind of stuff.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I'd like to receive this in the email, the presentation. It was
Yep.
very good.
Can you get that sent out to everybody?
Consider it done.
That'd be great.
Well, you want it in PowerPoint or in if
PDFs. probably.
PDF is easier.
I can provide, yeah, I can provide it as a PDF.
PDF's fine.
All right, Joanne, if you email that to me, then we'll take it for action.
So we'll have in our GIS, these layers that show for every pipeline what its status is.
Yeah.
And so if something comes up, we need to get on something, we can, oh, it's green, boom, we're done.
Right.
If it's orange, we got, all right, what do we got to do? And then go through the list of things we got to do and then maybe consider, well, let's do it differently. Now with some of the different liners and in situ replacement things, we can avoid a lot of the environmental issues, but they're there. So then we got to look at our construction method and pick the one that is the most cost effective to get the project done.
I have a comment. I would like to commend the staff for implementing and getting this started. I think it's a good bang for your buck in the end, and a very thorough report.
Yeah, we'll definitely be presenting on this at Aqua and AWWA because this is and I don't know, Joanne Helix does this for a lot of people and I'd never seen it quite done this way. When we talked about it, we said, let's do it this way let's just do all the pipelines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I've done a few of these, probably about a half a dozen, and this is the first time I've seen a district do all of their pipelines.
It was more work and it cost us a little bit to get there, but
But it's really comprehensive.
done.
Totally worth it.
Yeah.
And
Addendums are much easier
Yeah.
than to do a whole new system for this.
Yeah.
we appreciate the kudos. It really goes to Malik.
I was gonna say Malik was driving this bus for
He
2 full
lives
years
and
now.
breathes
and
this.
So
Absolutely.
Well done, Malik. Well
You
done.
don't, do you really
Good.
not know?
Yeah.
Oh,
Good job.
That's
Malik.
Malik.
I'll introduce you.
What do you do?
Everything.
Yeah.
Malik is one of
He's
the
the project
district's
manager.
project managers.
Got it. Okay.
Correct.
thank
He was the project
you.
manager.
Very modest, obviously, project manager. Thank you.
Okay, so I am looking for a motion by a committee member that, a motion to recommend option 1 to the board.
So I will.
Julie makes the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
The tie every time.
Helene
I
second?
sec-
Was it Helene?
Yeah.
Okay, Helene seconds. So Julie moves and Helene seconds that that this committee recommend that the board accept option 1 as recommended by the staff.
Okay.
Member Brazier,
Aye.
Member Gasca,
Aye, I was muted.
Member Marnet,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Member McKesson,
Aye.
and Member Nelson.
Aye. Resounding. Unanimous, excellent.
Thank
This is
you,
a
Joey.
Great, this is a great
Thank you.
thing.
Yeah, it's been a
This is
little
a
while.
great
but,
thing.
We're here.
Makes sense to me.
Now, if we can just get the easements, okay, okay. All
We're
right,
getting
Oh.
there, we're getting
Oh,
there.
there's good news coming there too.
yeah, yeah. Okay, item 16, Hutton and Turner Pump Stations Design Change Order, and this is an engineering item.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, so the committee received the draft board agenda. Hopefully these are helpful. They're helpful to staff because when the committee gets these, any recommendations that you all have, we vet through Tom, and then it goes to legal and ultimately to the board with those changes implemented. So this is a big one. The Hutton and Turner Pump Station project's been ongoing for a while. The board approved a professional service agreement with Hope Consulting. The original contract amount was a little over $166,000. And in starting to kind of, as I call it, peeling the layers of the onion back, we determined that there were several differences that when this was originally put out as an RFP and awarded to where we are now. It's a lot of kudos to the operations staff as they started segueing towards, if we detach, this system is going to be ran differently. Let's see if we can start running it differently as much as possible. Now it changed the district's previous hydraulic model. We were no longer floating some tanks. Pipes were doing things. Zones were expanding and shrinking. We were inflowing Morrow for the first time because new pipelines had been built, so on and so forth. So the design consultant was originally hired to say, location 1 and location 2, design these 2 pump stations. As Flint said, here are the easements already done. And it turned out that this was district-driven changes that the consultant helped us identify and work through, and we've been working through. So we issued a no-cost change order to the professional service grant where we just reallocated the existing monies around and allowed the consultant to go forth, really dive into that hydraulic model, start working on it. In doing so, it has opened up a lot of doors. Robert, Malik, myself, I don't even know how many hours of meetings that we've had with the consultant and with staff and just running scenarios. So the change order before the board at the August meeting will be in the amount of $299,000 and $299,061. That was originally over $400,000. Staff has gone back and forth with the consultant, and we have streamlined and narrowed down what their responsibility is. And Malik will be taking on a lot of what the consultant was going to do, but it was liaison type work between us and property owners and SDG&E, and we can do that in-house. It adds to the workload, but we can do it. And so we got this down to what we consider to be reasonable. But as the engineering and CIP program manager, I don't like having a change order that's double or triple our original contract. In this case, though, there are some items to note. It was 2 prefab pump stations at 2 set locations. One of those locations, the Hutton one, has changed. The designer had already completed 6 of their design sheets for Hutton that are now void. We have to start all over because the location changed. We went from 22 sheets for the 2 packages to now more than 34 sheets. So the scope is increasing. And in doing this hydraulic model and in working with operations, and I've told Tom this before, this was the first time in my 20 plus years of doing this where a civil engineer, a hydraulic modeler, and the operations department were all in agreement. And even Tom says, you should have recorded that meeting. Yeah. It just doesn't ever happen. They're always arguing that can't happen, so on and so forth. In this case, everyone was in agreement that this is the way it needed to be. And in doing so, the Weiss pump station, which was a part of that peer presentation where we're working with the city of Oceanside, that was at the time, that was kind of, this would be a really nice to have pump station. This is now a critical must have pump station. And we also identified a 4th, and in this project, a 3rd pump station, which is the Dentro pump station. And that's where the Ocean Breeze, not Ocean Breeze, I'm sorry, Bonzel Oaks. The Bonzel Oaks development is working off of Gopher Canyon, where we already have some easements. We're going to be doing some quick claiming. So we're working with that developer there. And that's where
I would add that in the Bonzel Oaks, the original plan had a pump station over in that area. But we had, as part of the wholesale water efficiency, tried to make the project as small as possible. But after doing some additional hydraulic modeling, we're actually going to need that. But it's a much smaller pump station. It's only a handful of CFS.
That's 5 CFS.
5 CFS compared to 12 or
15.
15
at Hutton.
15 at Hutton. So it's a third
Hutton has tripled from its original size.
And so it's but it looks like that's going to be necessary to meet every demand and take some of the heat off of a little bigger margin of error, let's say.
So we wrote the memo. Hopefully the committee had a chance to review the memo. Staff is happy to answer any questions the committee may have, but we are looking for a recommendation to the board to recommend approval of option 1.
Any questions or comments? From the committee? I thought your written explanation was quite clear.
Thank you.
I think it certainly highlighted, because obviously, as you said, going from 100,000 and change to 300,000 is a big deal. Adding 300 to 100 and change.
Yep.
But I think that the changes in scope, which were driven by the changes in planned operation and use, made sense. And I certainly was able, as a layperson, to understand it.
Tom makes us work very hard at that.
No, I.
Too technical.
Yeah,
Well,
it can be complicated. Yes, it
Well,
can.
you can't presume people know all the things that you know.
I read Tracy's reports and Tracy reads mine. And if we can understand it, we're ready to send to Tom.
Good, that's good collaboration.
Right, right.
Then I tell them to invert and rotate.
Yes.
So once again, we are at the point where I am looking for a motion, hopefully a motion to recommend that the board approve option one per the staff direction.
So, yeah, I'll move that we adopt and recommend.
All right, Steve moves.
Option one.
I need a second.
Second,
Julie seconds. Dawn,
Member Brazier,
Aye.
Member Gasca,
Aye.
Member Marnet,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
aye.
Member McKesson,
Aye.
and Member Nelson.
aye,
Thank you.
outstanding.
We're flying through this stuff, Ted. Only
If only,
4:30.
if only the prep was this quick.
Yeah, I know. Well,
That's exactly why we're flying.
exactly.
Clear.
Yeah, that's true.
If only, it's because.
Because of,
That's
okay, all
right.
right, fair enough.
Clear,
That's-
clear writing
that's-
makes
Okay.
the world go
That's
fast.
right. I agree.
Exactly right.
Okay, item 17, Rice Canyon Transmission Main Project, Participation Agreement Amendment number 3. So Chad, I guess that's you. You're going to tell us why we need a new, a third amendment
A third-
and what it's about, right?
Yes, and this, just as a caveat before we even go, we think this is within the general manager signing authority, but we're still waiting on legal to actually confirm that. So that's why we're bringing it to this committee and bring it before the board. It very well may require board action to sign the amendment.
It depends on whether, when the board adjusted the size of the contracts through some of the previous ones, whether my ability to
Yes.
did my 10% start over again
Yes.
or what?
So
that's what we're trying to.
I
find.
think. it needs
Erring
to
on the
be-
side of caution.
It's better to bring.
It's
it
better
together.
have.
Transparent.
Right.
Yep.
So we.
Exactly. So here we are. You'll see that there are some X's on the dollar amounts. That's because staff is so this is the
I just
project.
saw something today come through. on
It
that.
did come through.
Okay.
I had to write a nasty gram and
Okay.
it worked. People worked through the night and we got some numbers finally, but they're still preliminary.
Today.
But you'll see the X's because staff is coordinating with Tri Point Homes, who is coordinating with the contractor Cassiarda. So this is that unique situation where the district is under agreement with the home builder. They're doing the contract.
And
We have to-
piggybacked on their EIR.
and piggybacked on the RIR, but we have to still
Which is
approve
a big
everything.
difference.
So we're working very hard with that. We think that, as Tom said, we got some numbers very early this morning, I believe they
Yeah.
came in. We're in the 80,000-ish ballpark is where we're kind of leaning towards. There's some fees that we already upped on the previous change order that we don't think we're going to use on some of the consultant soft costs, but the rock, the main driver for this change order is the rock. As Flint mentioned earlier, the gnat catcher was extremely expensive. And the rock, we continue to hit rock. So we're still going through those T&M tickets. So when we did amendment 2, and I was asked directly, are you sure you need all of this money? If you're 60, we burned through that money because of rock and the gnat catcher immediately. So here we are, but the project, we are getting up at the rice tank itself. We're setting everything. Now we got some electrical work, some solar panels to install. And then the EFI pressure reducing station was actually a series of 3 is scheduled for delivery. So we are nearing the end of this. And so the home builder, Tri Point Homes, Cass Arietta, and the district is confident that this is the third and final amendment to this contract. Yes, there you go, Julie.
Knock on rock.
What percent complete are we on the project?
Let's see if Amanda's here. Amanda, could you unmute? We just had the progress meeting on Tuesday.
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
We're at about 75% complete. So all of the pipe and the tank inlet piping has been installed. We have some electrical components on the Rice Canyon tank that still need to be involved. So we're in the submittal, reviewing some of the submittals now. And then, as Chad mentioned, the pressure reducing station is expected to be delivered early next week. So that should be a fast turnaround for getting the PRS stations installed.
And then all of the testing of the pipeline and all of
Right,
that.
and all the final cleanup and
Yep.
site restoration and whatnot.
Yep.
So as I understand what you're saying, this change order is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of $80,000 plus
Ish,
or minus,
yes.
some number like that.
Yep.
Okay.
And so you'll see when, if the committee gives us the recommendation at the August 30th board meeting, those X's obviously will be filled in with the dollars.
Yeah, Chad had to tell them, look, you guys, if you want to get this done this month, we need those numbers like now, because we want to make sure we could describe it here. And that, like you said, I think it was 6 AM or,
Yeah, I told them close of business yesterday, but 6 AM the next day,
yeah.
it works. Comes like,
Robert and I already had our first phone call.
as soon as I hit send on that email, Amanda's phone started blowing up with, why did he have to send that? So we knew we'd done a good job.
Chad, I have a request, if possible. When I'm reading this, sometimes I have the PowerPoint that you did on the projects.
Okay.
I don't remember how many,
Mhm.
but to help us to maybe put it on the agenda or somewhere that we can look at that PowerPoint, see what project it is, just for us to be able to understand them and put them
Okay.
Map
together.
or whatnot.
Okay.
It just would help us and maybe even just have it here. But that way the committee members can say, oh, okay, that's the project we're talking about.
So in either the background or description of the action letter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
But that.
Or
way,
have it as
if
a
we
handout
want-
here.
If we want, we can refer back to that presentation you did
Okay.
with those projects.
Okay. And slide 9 or
That's
whatever it
right.
was. Okay.
Thank
right.
you.
Because we don't live and breathe this every day.
Got it.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think, okay, which one was that, which we could then just refer to.
Okay. We can do that.
And it's, of course, changing the name of the
Bird,
company
that's,
from
that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Bird.
Hardy to
Right.
Tri-Point and Meadowood to Citro didn't help either.
It just would help for some of us to put it together.
Sure.
And you guys can decide if that's something you want to do for the board. It's really just to help the
Yeah.
committee.
Okay.
That's.
I mean, if it's going to help someone who doesn't live and breathe it every day, have a quick reference point, we're happy to put that in the memo.
And the board members may not need it, but the
That's okay.
committee members, I think, would appreciate. it.
Okay.
It's actually really helpful if you guys put the project numbers in here, because then we can tie it to your PowerPoint, to the financial,
Okay.
to every dollar.
Okay.
Easy peasy.
Got it.
You got
You
that
worked so hard
presentation.
on
You just,
that other
you could just take that slide out and put it in as an exhibit.
Good.
Yeah, whatever,
mean?
but that
Oh.
PowerPoint, I'm referring to it all the time.
Okay. So
Great.
add project numbers to memo.
See, Chad, they're just piling on.
It's okay.
Well, we've already got the work done. So just, the whole thing is about how do we communicate better?
Yeah,
That's,
and
that's the
A
benefit.
couple
of
more
this.
sentences or like Tom just said, taking a slide and adding it as attachment A, it's already done. So
Right.
yeah, we can do
Well,
that.
you worked hard on that. You
Right,
should
right.
continue to use that as a.
Added
reference.
value.
Okay.
Let's, yeah.
Yeah, it's a reference
Let's take
for us.
advantage of it. Exactly. I'm with that. Okay, are there any questions by committee members on this item?
So you did receive the amount then? So when?
It is still in rough form. No, nothing has been vetted yet. We received some preliminary numbers, which the developer said we are looking in the ballpark of around
And
$80,000.
so the ask would be our recommendation on option 1, but within some kind of financial bounds.
Yeah, Tom, how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think that it would be in the general, I don't think it's going to change a heck of a lot from that. Look
I
at
mean,
what it is.
it-
We'll probably horse trade because there were some credits on soft costs on there. And so I think that if we do additional horse trading, it'll be, let's say 80 grand plus or minus 20.
There you
That'd
go.
be my guess.
So
Yeah.
Tracy
not
has
to
to be
exceed-
involved.
Not to
or
exceed
She has to
100.
change the budget projections when these things change, correct? Tracy?
It'll just come out of
Right.
some of our,
Okay.
yeah. And then we need to adjust our CIP budget at
Right.
mid-year and we'll do the horse trading then. Because some other project will be inevitably delayed, some
Good thing.
component of it to the next fiscal year.
Mhm.
It's a good thing we're on both committees.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But and when we write these memos, all the department heads review them for everyone. But
Okay.
Tracy specifically reviews our financial section
Okay.
to make sure we've cited it correctly and funds are allocated correctly.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so not to exceed 100 grand, I think is fine. And then we'll know the number by the time we get there. And if it turns out it's 101, we'll explain to the board what you said, and that's the board's discretion at that point. But I don't anticipate it would be.
Well, your numbers many times are fluid anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there any other questions or comments? If not, I am looking for a motion that recommends to the board option 1, and that includes make a determination that the action defined herein does not constitute a project as defined by CEQA. Approve amendment number 3 to the participation agreement for the construction of the Rice Canyon Tank Transmission Main Project to increase the total cost from $5.5 million to $5.58 or so $million plus or minus, thus authorizing a change order in the amount of somewhere in the vicinity of $80,000 plus or minus, and a budget increase of a similar amount. And then finally, authorize the general manager to execute amendment number 3 on behalf of the district once the board's approved it. Is that right?
Nailed it.
Don, did you get that?
Nope, I'll get it later.
Dawn stopped typing. I watched her.
Well, it's pretty close to what option
I
1
know,
is.
but it's like,
I
hey,
didn't
Don,
make-
you still-
Believe me, I did not make all that up. Okay.
I guess I'll make a motion on that one.
Okay, Julie moves. I need a second.
I'll second.
That was both Helene and Meg at
Yeah.
the same time, I think.
All right,
We had a
Big
triple.
lean.
all right,
I think Helene won.
okay, all right. There we go.
And that's to recommend the board adopt option 1.
Yeah.
With those
Yeah.
conditions
Yeah.
that we have there. Okay,
Okay, so let's proceed with roll call.
you got it. Member Brazier,
Aye.
member Gasca,
Aye.
member Marnett,
Aye.
member Johnson,
Aye.
member McKesson,
Aye.
and member Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, as we discussed earlier, the item 18 is going to be handled with a somewhat lighter calendar in September so that we can give it the time that it so deserves, the grant research. Item number 19, district solar opportunities update. This is an update.
Yeah, this update, we wanted to get back to the board on this because it comes up every now and then. We've been asked to look at solar opportunities at the Bonsall Reservoir. I know at one point that was quite a bit of discussion around that. We evaluated that, but then found that there's no electric meter there, and SDG&E wouldn't give us an electric meter for just having a solar thing, and you can't get on net electric metering unless your demand is there. The thing where they, give you some, back and forth on it, and we don't have any demand there. It's vacant site. And we wanted to dig deeper on it. So I contacted Lon House, who I'd worked with before years ago, and he used to lead the energy subcommittees for Aqua, and he was their preferred provider for this. He did all the work for Valley Center when they did their big solar projects, and works with water agencies around the state. And we had him look at the situation, especially with the Beck Reservoir. And it came down to, in his report, there's a couple of options. Net energy metering for us isn't an option for our sites like Beck and Bonsall Reservoir, which we have large surface land area because we don't have any demands. Valley Center has about 1 megawatt, but they've got pump stations right there on that site. Our pump station is located in places where we don't have space for it. Although maybe if we can get the Ocean Breeze to give us that big open space. No, they've got that for something else.
Let it go, please.
Yeah, they won't give us any of that. The state set up the RESBCT program, which is the Renewable Energy Bill Credit Transfer Program, where public agencies can develop solar on one site and use it at another. And this is something the legislature did about 10 years ago, I want to say. But they limited, the PUC limits the amount that's in there. And there's no availability in San Diego County. There were some projects that had gobbled up some of the space, but haven't been built yet. Nobody's budging on it. Dr. House and Art, and I even had a guy with SDG&E who I saw at a friend of mine's daughter's wedding and hit him up on it. Somebody I knew at SDG&E, and he's like, yeah, that thing's locked down because there's no incentive for SDG&E to allow more entrants.
Just incentive.
Right,
Yeah.
because they have to, it actually costs them. In that program, if we were able to get it there, they would have to build
Yeah.
the transmission facilities to get it out of there. And so right now, there's another option, because as a water district, municipal water district formed under the Municipal Water District Act of 1911, we can be an energy provider as well. But then we'd have to build all the infrastructure and all the stuff for that, which would be crazy to do. So essentially, unless we can find land next to a load, or like for the new headquarters, have solar on parking and where we're using it to power our facilities. And there's really not a lot of options for us to do any kind of large scale solar, unless the RASBCT program opens up. We'll continue to monitor it with our contacts at SDG&E, but it's been locked up for years. And as he indicates, there's no sign of it freeing up. Like we said, they don't have any incentive to make sure it happens. So it's kind of a damn if you do, damn if you don't situation, because, you know, we have a facility that could be put to use to generate several megawatts of power, but there's just no, and if the board wanted to do it and likely take an economic loss on it, we could do it if we just wanted to be green for green's sake. But the board has to have the one kind of green and the other kind of green, and we have to balance those two things. And so it's kind of stuck where we are.
How about what's in Congress right now? And would
Crazy
add-
people?
Well, let's not go that way. But there is, I believe, in the Senate right now, it's been passed and is going to the House regarding increasing solar.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how those federal bills will translate to the state and then to the PUC and down to the utility level and down to us. There's, you know, the PUC runs the investor-owned utilities. People have lots of opinions on how the PUC operates and whether it's in the consumer's interest or the utility's interest. It probably a little bit of both. But in this particular situation, they did the RSBCT, but they put these little chunks out there. It was like a show thing, and then all that got gobbled up, and then they never opened it up. I think more likely, better scenario for the state of California to pass a law to tell the Utilities Commission to open that up wider.
Right.
But you know, that would literally take an act of legislature to get it done, because right now we're kind of stuck. So it's frustrating, but here we are.
So Tom, in the spirit of you mentioned the new facility over there, put over the parking lot, et cetera. What about, and the lack of land that we can do this around, how about though dispersing it amongst all of the pieces that we have out there? And
Yeah,
in layman's terms, put panels over the top of every tank that we have.
Yeah, well, the trick is if you covered the tank with panels, most of our tanks have no power connection. So, so we do run solar at our tanks to run the radios and all that stuff. Freddie can tell you, we're running solar with battery backups.
Little stuff I'm talking about.
So that when something happens with batteries, and then large batteries, so we can run for a larger period of time. But we've run solar on our tank sites for years and years and years. But all you can do is offset the load you have there. So the pump station, we're using the big, the big old horsepower pumps, which you've seen the pictures of, solar panels don't touch that. And then, because those things are pulling.
There's not enough space at that point
You need an acre or two to even come close. And then a lot of times what people will do with those is to build storage with the solar and really use it to offset demand charges, because SCE charges you more for that first onrush when the pump starts. So you basically have a big supercapacitor kind of thing that you use to start the pumps. And then once they're started, then it kicks a level flow from SDG&E, but you need land space for that. And that's one thing we don't have in a lot of places where pump stations are remote or on the side of a hill, and we only own this little chunk of land. And I don't know that the folks over at the Moody Creek are going to want 3 acres of where they want to build their vineyards and stuff to be covered with solar panels for our purposes. So just acquiring that land would be problematic.
I'll just add that in a prior life, I was managing a golf course, and we had a tremendous amount of surrounding land away from the field of play. And all of that land was facing in exactly the correct direction to collect solar energy. And we had a residential community around that. So we had customers immediately available to us. And so it looked like the stars had lined up perfectly. The only problem is that, as this study notes, we were a long ways from the Edison transmission facilities or a substation. And when I found out what the costs were to transmit that power to a substation, because because of the intermittent nature of the power, we could not supply it directly to the residents. We had to feed the power into the grid, get a credit for it, and then the grid fed the customers in the resident. So it became not only inordinately complicated, but building that transmission line to a substation that was 5-6 miles away was just a really prohibitive cost. And, he says here, obtain a wholesale interconnection. That's one little line on this chart, but
Yeah.
it's probably,
Oh.
several $1 million,
Yeah.
considering the amount of electricity we're going to produce.
And the opposition we would find from
Right.
other interests.
Right. Heaven only knows what that line would have to go.
We'd have to
through.
get LAFCO approval as well if we try to get into some of that stuff. and
So it's
the whole-
unfortunate that we have that, and we will continue, I guess, to look for a alternative use if we can.
We need to,
That's nice.
continue to work with Aqua and whatnot to try to push for RESBCT to be expanded. That's really the only.
That's
solution,
really the only solution.
Because,
Or find an alternative use for the land.
yeah, the Beck Reservoir, yeah, that's gonna be a tricky one.
This item does not require any action by the
Nope.
committee. It is
Just
for
information.
information only.
Is there anything that keeps us from selling that land?
The Beck Reservoir, the Beck Reservoir. It's a huge concrete hole in the ground. I don't know what it could be used for. If you wanted to build houses on there, you would spend millions just getting it to be flat dirt.
Oh,
because it's a,
the liner and the concrete's all
The
there. You gotta
concrete's
pull all
gotta
that out
pull that
before it's
out.
usable for anything. I mean,
and then you're like, how many houses you're gonna get zoned for up there? 2? Those would be maybe some zillionaire someday would want to Elon Musk build a weird lair out of there or
Yeah, with
something.
an underground bunker.
Yeah.
okay, we're getting way far afield now. All righty. Thank you, Rob. All right. Item 20. Wholesale water efficiency project updates, presentation, engineering and operations. This is an item that I had suggested / requested at the last meeting. And I hope that there was not too much confusion about it. The primary interest that I had was with the 2 projects that we are intending to perform in-house, which is Gird Road and Wilt Road. And because we are doing it in-house and it is a follow-on to another project that we did in-house where we are using these projects to evaluate what our corporate capacity is for long-term commitment to doing certain kinds of pipeline projects in-house rather than out-house, and the savings and the economies of scale and savings of time that are associated with that. So that was my primary interest in wanting to just know, now that these projects have been approved, what's our plan for the ones that we were going to do in-house? So I guess, is that Chad or is that Robert?
It's all. So Robert's doing the boots on the groundwork, and we have Malik as our PM on these 2. And that was just based on it was a voluntold thing, because I looked at Amanda and Malik and both started tying their shoes. So yeah, it's engineering and operations. So everyone's working on this, but Robert's going to do the lion's share of the talking on this
Okay.
presentation. So right, you just tell me when you want me to change slides for you.
Change slides for me.
Next slide.
Wow.
You just want my laptop?
Yeah, he needs to read the slide.
No, I'm not a slide reader. I just want to see what I'm supposed to do.
This is the background of the 5 wholesale water efficiency
So
projects.
this- When we talk about the wholesale. water
You can tell the
efficiency
age of the
projects-
person who made the PowerPoint just
Yeah.
by looking at the font size.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's white print.
When we talk about the wholesale water efficiency projects, this includes the Gird Road, the Wilt Road, the pump stations that we're putting in. But it actually goes as far back, and Chad and I were talking about this, as to when we put the Olive Hill States transmission main back in. That was really the first project where when we put that back in, we were able to flow more water into Morrill Reservoir. And Morrill Reservoir is a key to it's where we're depositing the majority of the water to get it moving south. Okay, so to be able to put more water in there faster is better for us, because once we build the pump stations, we're going to have increased demand coming out of that reservoir. So there's a lot of different components. Gird Road, if you can see where that is, we're starting at the entrance right there to Diego Estates, and we're going to work our way south, almost 2,000 feet. The Barron property right here, this belongs to the Bonsall
Mhm.
High School District. And we've been in negotiations with them and worked out a good deal that we can lay our, install our staging area there. So where we're gonna have our pipe, where we'll leave our vehicles, our backhoes, equipment, stuff like
Is there a
that.
school there now?
No, and there's
Is it
not
just
gonna,
bare land?
it's bare land.
Okay.
It's
We-
it's the proposed site of a future high school.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
the lease
Flint,
payment,
Why did the
Flint,
school district?
Flint, we don't even want to go there.
Yeah, It's
The lease
it's a hot
payment-
potato. It's a hot potato.
Hot potato.
the lease payment
Here.
consists of taking out some trees and stuff
Yeah.
and doing some minor cleanup and some grading out there.
So, and we'll, as we get in next couple slides, we'll go in a little bit more detail of the work. Malik's really good with coordinating with residents, and school districts now.
I feel sorry for him.
We came up with a funding number of nearly $600,000, and we're going to get into how we arrived at that number. And yeah, that was a little bit challenging, but with the changing costs of materials, it's a really interesting time right now for everybody. We're actually planning on starting it the middle of August. We're waiting on county permits. That's all we're waiting on. The pipe's down in the lower lot down there. We already have the pipe here. We'll talk about potential opportunities, critical path, obviously, there's a county permit, and we think we're gonna be done in winter. And that sounds like a long time frame. The actual laying of the pipe's probably only gonna take about a month. But then you add in their water quality testing, then tying in both ends. But what the long lead time item is actually the paving. So we got to get permits to get the pavers in there. We got to get on their schedules. So we've left ourselves a nice little window to deal with the paving. And then you're kind of edging into a little bit of the rainy season as you approach December.
We hope it.
Hopefully.
hope.
So that could impact paving operations. But the actual work that we're doing wouldn't last more than a couple months. Next slide, please.
Did it, Jay? No,
Nope, that's it.
okay.
More
Okay.
slides.
No, I don't know why it's not. Yeah, there we go.
So,
Okay.
Robert, I have a question.
Sure.
The location of this. Have you considered what needs to be thought through to prevent vandalism
Vandalism of,
of the equipment and all that?
oh, yeah. So we actually have a good plan for that. So when you're on Gerd Road and when you
Right.
look up into that property, the goal is to put everything, because there's a little slight ridge, is to get
Right.
everything on the other side of that ridge. So when you drive by Gerd, you don't see,
Okay,
you see the eucalyptus trees and a field. You don't see anything that's going on up there.
okay,
We
that's fine.
we generally don't have vandalism issues with our stuff out here. I haven't seen it. When I worked at Oceanside, it was a
Okay.
lot. It was pretty like we wouldn't leave equipment on the street overnight.
Right.
But we don't really have.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of a good point. I don't think it's vandalism. I think it's really more like breaking and entering. I've got a brother-in-law, sister-in-law that live up there on Gerd, up closer to Bluebell. And there was about 4 homes on their drive that all got hit in one day. And the more you kind of dig into it, the more you find that that Gerd Road area is a real popular place where thieves have been, burglarizing and such.
Well, it's good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're unlikely to try to drive off with a 20-foot stick
Yeah.
of 16-inch, you know,
Yeah,
pipe or
yeah.
18, is it 18 or
18.
18 inch?
18 inch.
I just wanted
strap that
to
to
bring
the
it
top of
up
their
because
Corolla.
we have seen an increase in odd vandalism
Mm.
type of things happening in this area. And so I think you'll be fine, but we don't know.
We're gonna hide in plain sight.
There you go. Okay.
And just to refresh everybody why we're doing this project. So going down Gerd Road, the line's an 18-inch, then it goes to 12-inch for this 2 feet and then goes back up to 18-inch. And what we think is this is hampering us on how fast we can put water in more reservoir. Because that's a big bottleneck right there. So we're hoping that once this gets changed, we're highly confident once we upsize this line, that we're going to see an uptick in how much water we can get into Morrow. When we did the Rainbow Heights water line, that was 8-inch pipe. It was on essentially a dead end street.
Middle
Uh,
of nowhere.
middle of nowhere. There wasn't traffic issues. So by doing this project, this is what I would consider a full-on like legitimate project. We're in traffic. We've got to do public outreach. We're going to have to deal with county permits, like the full gamut of everything's going to be in this project. So if we just took Rainbow Heights and said, hey, we're less expensive than a contractor based off of 1,600 feet of Rainbow Heights, we wouldn't be doing our due diligence. But by doing this job and then doing a longer job on Wilt, which is almost a mile.
It's under a mile.
It's well under a mile, Robert. I want to make sure that's clear.
Sounds better when you say it's almost a mile.
It's not a mile.
There must be some kind of rule
Tom and I based to say it's under a mile.
It's under a
So
mile.
it's,
Categorical
from-
exemption.
I said it's nearly a mile. There's a PEIR coming into effect. So the coordination that we've done so far, so our team right now for this project consists of myself, Issa, and Malik, and we're meeting every 2 weeks roughly. And just having internal meetings, and part of that's permitting with the county. Malik's doing the coordination with the school district for that property to use that property. What is it? How much is it going to cost? What do you want us to do? And we've actually did really well. There's no cost associated. We just have to do a couple little things for them. They want a couple eucalyptus trees dropped, do a little grading over here, and it's totally within our scope to do something like that. It's not a big deal. And the reason the coordination is really important with the school district is because the residents there, we don't want them to say, oh my goodness, the school's building a school here. They've never told us they were going to build this, because when they see our equipment move on site.
Yeah.
So we've got a project sign that's going up on the fence. We also have project signs that are going to go up by Diego Estates and then closer down by Highway 76, basically saying this is a pipeline project. We're just using this property for temporary storage. The other coordination is working with our vendors to get the material that we need and the lead times and ordering some of that material. We took advantage of the pipe that we're using on this job and we did a larger order and already placed the order for the Wilt pipeline because it's the same size pipe and the manufacturers can, because of the order we place, can manufacture all that in one shot. So there's an economy of scale. We're doing some savings by ordering that pipe now. Who knows if the price is 6 months from now when we go to start Wilt on that pipe might be increased. I doubt they're going to go down. I haven't seen prices go down anything yet. Am I missing anything on coordination? No. Day-to-day operations is going to be handled by Issa. And he's our construction supervisor. So he's going to pick the guys that he wants out on that job. We're going to start with 6 guys. This is not the time for us to send our guys out there that want to learn how to operate equipment. This is not that kind of job. This is a production job. Everybody's really aware of that. Nobody's feelings are going to get hurt if you're not producing. We're going to yank you off that piece of equipment or whatever you're doing. We don't have time for that. We really have to hustle because we have to act as if we are a contractor on this job. The tracking of this, can you go to the next slide? So the way that, this is the cost. So let me talk about tracking real quick. The way that we track things through here is through EAM, and it's our work order system. So once we do a work order, we create a work order, we can add our time in there, and we just don't say we did 8 hours on the GERD road. We have activity codes that we can break it down, how long it took us to backfill, how long it took us to lay pipe, and you pick an activity code and you lay time to that activity code. So like a lot of what we're doing right now is just meetings, that activity code's 102. If you're, and then we even have as far as drive time. How long did it take you to drive from here to there? If it took you 10 minutes, that goes on your time. So we have all these activity codes where we can get really down into the weeds of how long it took to execute each function of that job. Then what we do is we work with finance to get a project number that we slap onto that work order number. And that project number, what it does is it takes all, Tracy can take all of our costs and they all get tied to that project number. So when the warehouse orders pipe for us, it gets charged to that work order and project number. When we rent equipment, it gets charged to that work order and project number. So at the end, Tracy can take all that and collate it very quickly. Instead of saying, okay, well, we got to find copies of these receipts and where's that receipt? And are we keeping track of this on a spreadsheet, et cetera, et cetera? It's already pre-done for us. The way that we arrived at the cost of this project is we looked back at Rainbow Heights. So we looked at our labor costs for Rainbow Heights, how many feet of pipe it was. We looked at, there wasn't really much permitting, staging area, geotech. We kind of compared all those. So we basically did a comparison off of Rainbow Heights to get all these costs. And then what we did is we built in a little bit of a contingency right around 5%, just for some of the unknowns that we're not sure we're going to have. Rental stuff's easy to get costs. We call them and get a quote. What's a 2-week rental? What's a month rental on their equipment? They tell us. Traffic control, it's the same thing. Give us a day rate on your traffic control and we figure out how many days we're going to need it. So that's how we came up with this budget. And it was not a, how do I say it? We just didn't shotgun blast it. We actually have some thought behind arriving at this budget. And then we'll take these numbers to help us dial in the budget for Wilt. Now we do have a number for that, but these numbers are going to get us even closer when we finish this project. And then the Gantt chart. So we put together a Gantt chart for GERD, kind of laid out a schedule for us. We talked about this. It turned into a decent conversation actually. And kind of laid out the different activities and how they're going to go forward. What we're going to do at the end of this project is once we get all of our costs, Tracy had developed a spreadsheet for Rainbow Heights, or actually a workbook, where we can break down all the individual costs and come up with a per linear foot, how much it costs us in-house to do the work. So we take the fully burdened overhead rate of our employees. We add in all those previous costs where we had the rental equipment, the materials costs, everything else, paving, all that, just as if we were a contractor. And then we can come up with the price per foot. Very detailed workbook. And this is where at the end, we'll work together, myself, Tracy, and try and figure out these numbers and see, are we competitive at this level of work with this size pipe with the contractors? And we'll find out what they're charging per foot. That's easy to do. We just call them. 18-inch C900, what do you guys charge a per linear foot?
I can't read those little
I
tiny,
can't
I've
either.
tried looking at both charts and I can't read it.
Yeah, we're gonna.
But I'm
have
gonna
a
make an
PowerPoint
observation
synthesis.
and you don't need to do all that, Robert. Let me just what I see as a project schedule there is I see a very minor amount of what I would consider critical path sequencing, and I see a substantial amount of simultaneous or parallel time bars. And when I realize this is a particular kind of work, so I get that. But when I normally see that, my little brain goes, wait a minute, you can't do all that work in parallel. But it depends, since I don't know what the words are, I don't know what the work is. And so maybe you can do it in parallel. I don't know, but it just makes me wonder.
So part of the parallel, so when let's say we're going to start August 20th. Okay. That's the time we're going to be working on the laydown yard, getting the laydown yard prep, moving material over there. But while that's going on at the same time, we're also going to start working in the street, right? When we're done laying pipe, you're starting to do your water quality testing. Okay.
No.
That, and you're flushing, that's not necessarily in parallel. It's at the end. And then separate to that is just asphalt work.
Because that leads me to the part that I'm maybe you've got it and I'm not being patient enough.
Maybe it's the outreach.
No. I guess what I was really looking for is to, in addition to all of this, which is good, is what is the work? I mean, we're gonna replace a 600-foot segment of pipe from 12-inch to 18-inch. is that pipe located in the middle of Gird Road? Is it on the side of Gird Road? Are we going to trench? How are we, where are we trenching? Is Gird Road going to be reduced to one lane or is it going to be able to stay as two? That's what I was trying to understand about what is the work,
So that would have been, I could have covered that under the day-to-day operations. So if you drive out there right now, you'll see some white lines. We actually laid it out so we could see where our bends are going to be.
Yep.
And to answer your questions, there's some days where it will be one lane in each direction where we'll have traffic control, like flaggers out there. But there's other days because Gird's so wide, we think we can make 2 lanes to get cars by. So a standard lane's 12 feet wide. We can take it down to 11. The minimum's 10, but the
Is the
semi-truck
pipe
and
that we're
buses-
going to be replacing, is it in the middle of the road? Is it to the right or
it's
is it
off
to
the-
the
it-
east or the west? What is
So
it?
it's gonna be, that pipe is on the east side of Gird, then you have your sewer line down the middle, and our line's going mostly on the west side.
Our line
so-
is on the west.
And we're
side.
not actually replacing it, we're gonna leave it in place. And we're gonna, the way that we're doing our tie-in up at Diego States, it's gonna make that section a 12-inch into a low pressure line, like a normal pressure line. And we'll cut and cap it at the end. So we're actually gonna use it, but we're gonna turn into a lower pressure line instead of running 233 PSI there to feed those homes that are right there. It'll drop.
So
down
the
about
12-inch line that's under the little bridge on Diego Estates, that is just going to be capped and abandoned?
It'll be abandoned farther down, closer to Highway 76.
Okay.
At Diego Estates is where we're gonna tie it into. So if
That's what I was just trying to get a grasp of is, where's the pipe in the road? What are you going to do?
Yep.
It sounds like you've got a pipe there and instead you're going to do this. and
we're
then
gonna
come back.
dogleg around it, exactly,
Okay.
exactly,
All right.
And Robert, it's a dig lay backfill operation. So
correct.
depending on how many feet we can dig, then lay the pipe and then backfill that and have cold mix down at the end of each day is how far we get.
And so you're going to have to basically cross Gird Road twice. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
There's, yep,
You'll do a cut this way and a
Yep.
cut that
Correct.
way. And that's when your major traffic flow issues will occur, right?
More than
Is when you do the
more
cuts.
than likely.
Okay.
And we'll have a couple steel plates out there. When you start laying your pipe, when you finish at the end of the day, you usually put 1 or 2 steel plates down.
Mhm.
You don't backfill all the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the challenges for us, so the challenges are for us is nobody here's done pipe that size, but generally speaking, whether it's 8-inch or 18, it doesn't really matter. The whole operation's the same. This is the way you excavate, the way you backfill, the way you install it is literally the same. It's just a little bit more difficult to handle. You can't manhandle 18-inch pipe. You've got to pick it up with a piece of equipment and move it and set it, and it's time consuming. What we don't know is the unknowns, right? How's our crew going to be able to handle this? And we're starting this project off in the peak summertime. I'm pretty confident these guys will do it. I've seen them work out there in the heat. They can handle it. It's just the coordination that we're going to have to get down when you're moving pipe back and forth and you're excavating, is getting that into a nice rhythm. So we're not stepping on each
And
other's
so when do you
toes.
plan to start?
Well,
You said
August
summertime. It's,
22nd.
we're in August.
August
When the
20,
county
August,
gives us a permit.
August 22nd is what we're shooting
Okay.
for. We are only waiting on the county at this point
Okay.
for the permit.
Okay.
Yes.
Several things, Robert.
Sure.
One, I don't know, well, I guess you're the one working with Bonzel Unified. I suggest that you get the information about buses and what will be the time for parents and students to be driving on that road and coming back from the schools to just alleviate some frustration
Okay.
of our community members. The second
idea.
thing is,
We should see Joseph tomorrow morning at the Rotary meeting.
there you go, just because that's being a good neighbor, just saying, hey, okay,
Right.
when should we not be working on this?
Right.
So the second thing is, shout out to you and your team, because as next meeting, we're going to be talking about grants and all that. What you're doing is actually starting the procedure of showing documentation that you can do a thorough way of documentation for grant writing. So what you've done is very brilliant.
Well, it's a team effort.
Well, no, but it's
Everybody
important.
involved. Yeah. And
Because
it's,
that's what you do when you are wanting to go for a grant. You have a procedure that you can explain to the readers that you know what you're doing here.
correct.
Yeah, we've logged just over 3 million personnel hours in the EAM
Yeah.
since we put it in 2016. We just went up 3 million personnel hours have been booked into EAM. And every minute that every employee does here is tracked
Yeah,
in very great detail. So like
that's.
as
good.
we'll see, that the HR uses it for our staffing analysis, and we have a ton of wealth of information. And it'll be very helpful as we go through these projects and look at where was the labor going, how was that being used, where are we more efficient, where are we less efficient, what do we need to work on?
Does the committee want to continue and hear about Wilt?
Or you want us to,
You know what? The hour's getting late. May
Yeah.
I recommend that we do Wilt and action numbers 18, 21, 22 in our next meeting?
Before we move off of the GERD, so, you know, right now is kind of the dog days of summer, plenty of heat, but also long days of summer. And I guess the question is, when were you planning on starting the work? Because the earlier we can start, you know, the more you beat the heat.
I usually wake up between 3:30 and 4:30. So I'm good to
Yeah,
start 5:30.
But
you're talking about,
when's your crew gonna start?
Oh, yeah, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Tom and I were talking to each other at 5:45 this morning. I think he was my third person I had talked to from work. We're kind of crazy like that. Legally, we could start at 7. That's probably not a good idea. The guys get into the yard around 6:30 in the morning. By the time they get their trucks loaded and head out there, it's going to be closer to 7:30. And then more than likely we'd be wrapping things up between 3 and 4. They need to get back to the yard by 4. The problem is if we get into overtime, then it starts to changes our bottom line. We start having to pay time and a half to have.
but there are certain periods of time when you've got this stick of pipe that
Right.
it's,
Gotta do it.
you gotta get it done tonight
Yeah.
because stop and then secure everything and do it tomorrow. It'll happen.
But being out there till 8 o'clock at night every night is not.
Not a good.
That's
it's-
not helpful.
Yeah,
That's where injuries happen.
it's not going to help our bottom line at all.
That isn't what I was talking about.
Oh.
I was saying starting as early as possible, and you know, GERD is a heavily traveled road. Aside from just the buses, and I guess the question in my mind is how this thing could be segmented in order to allow people to flow easily up and down, getting out, and then, you know, having to deal with the same thing in the afternoon or evening.
Yeah, it all comes down for us. There's a balance between convenience and efficiency of the project, you know, because we could say, wait to start work until 9 a.m. and then get out of there by 2 p.m. So we miss
Get
both ends of it,
today.
but it'll kill our efficiency. The county traffic control permit will designate that we've got to keep as much space as, we're gonna try to keep as much flowing as possible.
The
There's
intent,
no way to do it without.
the
some
intent
impact.
is to keep 2 lanes open. They just won't be the normal lanes. We'll have them defined by cones. The traffic control expense on this job, if we did traffic control every day, like if we had flaggers out there and we were stopping traffic in both, it's going to be over $40,000 just for this project. So it benefits us to keep those
That's
lanes
almost up there.
open to
That's
save
almost as
that
much
money.
as birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're paying for
Yeah, hopefully
2
we can
guys
get
and
them.
all their equipment to be out there all day, every day.
Well, just
Okay.
to be crazy and heretical, following up on where Mig is, as Caltrans has sometimes does, is there any, would there be benefits and costs associated with prosecuting the project from 9 o'clock at night until 4 in the morning?
So it's
Not much traffic on GERB.
no, that's great. There's no traffic. You're not dealing with heat. It's a really good opportunity. It does bring up a couple concerns. The biggest concern is the amount of noise we're going to make out there at nighttime for all those residents. That's
Yeah.
probably the biggest one where people are just not going to tolerate that. The second concern comes, it's not necessarily concern, but we wouldn't be paying our staff overtime. We would just change our schedule and say, you're working
Right.
night shift
Like
now
Right.
hours.
instead of day shift.
Right.
The problem with that, because we don't have the whole construction crew built out like we, 12, 14 people, whatever we're going to end up having. If we have those guys working at night, 6 guys, and there's 8 guys on that crew, and something happens during the daytime, those guys are at home sleeping.
It is tricky to put guys on temporary night shifts, and I've done it for different
Yeah.
specific projects for short terms, but for a month it gets tricky because most of these guys aren't used to working graveyard. People that work graveyard on a regular basis get into that routine of knowing how they have a really dark room to sleep in. Their family knows not to bug them. I worry you get into things where people don't get appropriate rest, then you get into injuries and things like that. But we'll take a look at it.
Well, the only reason I raise it is if our duration of actual work in the ground is only about a month, 4 to 6 weeks, then it's not like, we're laying 15 miles of road.
Yeah.
And I just thought for a short duration project, maybe it's a thought, but you guys are smarter about
Yeah,
that. And there are a
done it
lot of
for
considerations.
couple of days at a time, and it rocks people's world. But we'll take a look at it. We want to, obviously, part of this and part of the other projects is for us to take a look at what are all these things that we should be looking at, and if to expand this and start doing more, what resources are we going to need?
Right.
What management structures are we going to need? What sort of tracking things are we going to need? And so, I think this is all dipping our toe in the
Your
water.
point's really valid, and we do that. So like, let's say we have work in the intersection of Olive Hill and 76 wastewater work, that's done at nighttime. Right? So we do take opportunities to
shift
schedules. But this is something where it's one of those things. Maybe we'll learn something from it.
Smarter people than me need to answer that. That's fine. I think
the noise issue is going to be a bigger one in a lot of these places.
And safety.
All right, I think going to Wilt Road is another piece of work that no pun intended. We'll pun on Wilt Road and we'll come back to that. I would like to just learn a little bit more about how you intend to do Wilt, given that it's a narrow road, it's twisty, windy, you got stuff. I just am curious what the general plan is.
A lot of bends.
Love to hear that, but we can do that next month if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that gets us to item number 21, review the district's annual report, financial impacts and human resources sections.
Mr. Chair, I would like to recommend to the committee that we wait and do these next items at our next meeting, looking at the time.
Well, let's find out, first of all, how long does this item take? Who's doing it? Is it
Tracy, were you doing that, or was that
No,
Carlene?
this was at the request of Julie.
Yeah, was this the one where you wanted Carlene to come in, or? think
We
so.
can pass on that.
I think this one should have been removed actually from the agenda. It was something Carlene was gonna do.
Okay.
I
know
didn't
she
hear
was
that,
here.
but okay, it doesn't matter. What?
You can't lip read?
Huh? No, I can't.
No.
And the mask muffling is not helpful.
I don't think she's here or.
She wasn't earlier,
prepared
but-
to
Yeah, she's-
present.
So this is an automatic punt anyway,
Yeah.
right? Okay, fine. So the last one is the as needed summary, and I noticed there's one new task, right?
Yep.
And of course, I need 2 sets of glasses. Oh, it's my favorite project, the Live Oak Park
Yes.
Road, bridge, water line, relocate. So you're using your geotech. What exactly are you doing there? Just standard, says observation and testing.
Standard geotech.
So basically leaning on a shovel, waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, and we haven't even started that part yet. So this is just getting them ready to go.
Okay, all right. Then, as best I can tell, items for next time will be the grants.
Mhm.
Next time will be Wilt Road. Next time will be item 21, annual report. None of those are board action items, correct?
No, they're not.
Correct.
Grants, Wilt Road, and annual report. None of those are board action, right?
Correct.
I have a request.
Yep.
I would appreciate if the staff could give us at the next meeting, some proposed visits of sites that would be value added for our knowledge base as our discussion. To
Sure.
see which.
Did I ever
site
give you the
should-
tour? Did I give you the tour? You
No.
never got
Yeah,
the
if
tour?
you we can.
I don't know
give
if I
you
ever gave
tours,
Steve the
but
tour.
If you have a free time, I'm more than willing to give you a
Well,
tour.
Yeah.
well, I'm actually recommending that you maybe come up with one because we have several committees and maybe other committee members would like to do it as well, because your time's very valuable. And so I was just thinking, I don't want to take anyone's time, but I think it would be good for us to be able to see some of these sites. And I can do it on
Sure.
my own, but I don't know what you. would
Well,
like.
you need keys and codes and
yeah,
things to get into places that are.
It's really not, if we know, like, let's say 2 weeks ahead of time when we put a date aside, actually Tracy and I are planning one to go do one.
But normally when I do it, it's 3 or 4 hours to
Yeah,
get around.
I've done it with.
And if
project
you want to do
managers.
everything, it's a day and a half.
No, I
I've
don't
done it
have a
with
day and a half, but I think just
hitting a
thinking
couple
about which would
projects.
be ones that would be worthwhile. For example,
Right.
I don't have the expertise, but I think as we discuss this, it would be good to have a vision of what we're talking about.
Okay. And so create a calendar invite for all committee members that want to participate.
Or who,
Or we look on their schedules,
yeah, just,
Okay.
we can talk about it after the meeting, but
Okay.
it'd be good to just see some of the sites. And I know, Tom, you haven't offered that many times, but I value how busy you are. And so some of it, if I could do it by myself, but okay.
Yeah, it's just some places to try to tell you how to get there and then to get in the gate and then to get in the building. Like a lot of them, I gotta arrange if I don't have the key to have this, like one of the pump stations, we'll have one of the operators meet us there because we don't give those keys aren't in
okay.
general circulation.
A good one, just once we start laying pipe on Gert, if you want to stop by out there, I can meet you out there and we
Okay.
can walk the job site.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Good.
That's
Because
that's
if
an
I
easy
have
one.
enough advance notice, I can allot 3 hours or something.
yeah, that's great. Because then I'm killing two birds with one stone, so I can be there and see what they're doing as
Okay,
well. So
perfect.
something like that's great.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Excellent.
Yeah, so one thing I would comment to, because I've been thinking about, the tour and whatnot. And when we did it, Tom, I think we ran all the way up to Rainbow and
Heights and
we got through as much of the district as we could. I think the recommendation that I would make to Julie is whatever division you're in, make sure that you get everything covered there. Okay. And then from there, whatever the targets of opportunity are that you can get to quickly, then, get to them, in that 3 hours, if you can cover it all in 3 hours. And then on a succeeding time, get out to some of the other key facilities in the other divisions that you didn't make it to. Because I've driven by some of the tanks over in Division 2, Olive Hill, etc. But I have not gotten into them. I've just driven by because I knew where they were. And if you want to get inside to really get a good feel for the equipment that's there and all that, you really need to have that extra time to be able to get in through the gate and check it out.
right.
Okay, thank you, Mick.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm Division 1.
I would think that you guys have a lot of pictures of all of these sites.
Mhm.
Seems to me it'd make it be a lot easier if you just
Yeah.
made a little packet of pictures for each site and anybody could have access to them and save a lot of driving.
Yeah, I'm one of the reasons I always take all our board members and a lot of committee members around is to give people a sense of the scale
Mhm.
of getting from A to B, because they're like, why does it take so long? Well, somebody needs to go pick up something at the yard. Well, it's a 45-minute round trip and it's just down the street. And getting from Rancho Heights to, Gopher Canyon, it's a haul. And so that's part of the reason to give a sense of scale. But and there's certain things, a picture when you're standing at Mora Reservoir, looking at that big expanse with the wind blowing on your head, and it's different than seeing a picture of it. It's a different
Size.
visceral feeling. Yeah, to get the scale of it,
Size,
you're
yeah.
just. But it's definitely we can definitely do that as
Yeah,
well.
and that we have project cut sheets for every single CIP project. So
Right.
Yeah.
But
Well,
for
just
sure.
if someone has time and those that you think are very good for a committee member to see.
What I normally do is like for board members is get them up to the tallest part of the district and then down the lowest part, but then also do the primary elements of our wastewater system, the aqueduct system, some of our big reservoir like Morrow and Beck. And then now with our lift stations under construction, that'd be another one. with Rainbow Heights Pump Station, that's gonna be added to the list of stops.
Yep.
Because we used to drive,
It
I
was
didn't,
on
I
the
didn't,
list of stops, but for the other reason.
I would show them those old diesel, those old natural gas pumps just to say, yeah, these, they gotta go. And those things were a mess. But we can definitely arrange that. And whatever your schedule is, let us know. When you, tell us when your 3-hour window is. If it's not me or Robert, it might be Issa or Steve.
We
or
do it for
Chad.
internal staff. So we started doing that for the staff that
Finance
doesn't
staff.
get out to the field. So our supervisors have been taking them out to the field to show them stuff. So
But
this is,
I don't have to be
yeah.
by myself. It's just if, when it's convenient, I just need 2 weeks.
I'll get with
notice.
you, Julie.
Okay,
I'll get
thanks,
with you.
Chad. I don't want to inconvenience anyone, but I think it would be value added as a member of this committee. to
Totally
see
helps.
What's going
Yeah.
out
I'll
there.
make sure I
Bob
get-
gets a view of the
I'll get
tank every
Robert's
day.
Credit card. We'll have
Okay,
lunch.
there you go.
We'll do it.
All right.
Okay. For next time, grants, Wilt Road plan and annual report. That's all I'm aware of. Plus whatever.
Whatever
items
comes our
the committee
way.
Comes up with, I mean, the staff has to send to the board, right?
You'll see the draft agenda when we're
Right.
ready. Yep.
Okay.
I do have one more. I would like to, if possible, to have a report on the overtime, especially of the crew members, how we're doing on that from the annual report.
Well, that's what Carlene has,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she wasn't here.
yeah.
It's just to say, here's our
Yeah.
annual report and this is how we're doing so far on the areas of that we wanted to improve on.
And do you want that for this committee or for the finance committee?
Actually, that'd probably be finance.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay.
All right, great. It's 5:28, so I think we'll declare victory.
QED.
This is QED. Let's quit and eat dinner. Call it quits. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank
If I give you a key to the gate, can you give tours of?
All right.
See you next time.